Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Collar Off-Road Podcast, episode 138. I'm joined by Richie, Cody, myself, Luke. Graham will not be here this week due to him being on vacation, and our guest this week is Ricky Barrette of Barrette Fabrication. How you doing, buddy?
Not bad yourself?
Pretty good. So, how did you get into this sport before we start asking all the cool technical stuff?
So, I guess I always wanted a Jeep because, like, when I was a kid, my dad had a CJ7, but unfortunately, that got totaled out before, like, before I was old enough to go doing off-road stuff with them and stuff. I guess my uncle thought it was a good idea to borrow the Jeep while I was uninsured and race a dog and get in a car accident with it. So that wasn't good. But I always had like this need to have a Jeep, and my dad liked to tell stories about how when the Jeep was in the backyard while he was rebuilding it, he had to replace every single bolt on it because somehow, like, my little 5-year-old fingers removed all the bolts without tools. He doesn't even know how I did it. You know, like, you got that little retard strength, and then little tiny 5-year-old fingers, I guess they're like vice grips.
I don't think that's how that works.
I'm pretty sure it's how it works, you know? Sheer determination. But, so I never really wheeled much as a kid. So what ended up happening is when I was 19, I got a decent job with the electrical union as an electrical apprentice, and I ended up buying my first Jeep, which is a 2007 two-door JK, and that thing was amazing. It was obviously the first car I ever bought brand new. And I was pretty proud as being a 16-year-old kid buying a brand new car. Like, my mom and dad they were much older in life when they were able to do that. And what ended up happening was I discovered the Suncoast Flatlanders because I was living in Seminole, Florida at the time. So then that's in the Tampa Bay area. And I met up with these guys, went off-roading, and like, they don't really have a lot of cool stuff down there as far as like rock climbing and stuff, but it's a lot of like trail rides and washouts and stuff like that. But needless to say, like, one of my first trips off-road was in the Citrus Wildlife Management area in Ocala, and that place was like awesome. So I got bit by the bug pretty hard, and 6 months later I ended up rolling my Jeep.
Your new one?
Yeah, my brand new one, 6 months out into it. I got an awesome picture that I have on my Facebook somewhere of me just standing on top of my upside down two-door JK with my head in my hands going like, what the fuck did I just do?
So how did you do that?
What happened?
How did you manage to flip it?
So at that time, young and dumb, I was invincible. I didn't really think that like it was ever going to happen to me. And what ended up happening was I was dropping off like this ledge, but I didn't square up to it, and I dropped the driver tire first, and then it was too much of a drop, and so when the driver tire dropped, it kind of rolled over end to the side.
Ouch.
Oof.
Yeah, so now I square up to everything.
It's a good call. Good learning lesson.
And so that ended up getting pulled out because it was just astronomical to fix all the body work. And what ended up working out in my favor is I got the gap insurance, so that paid that Jeep off, and my credit went up. So it was awesome.
Oh, there you go.
And so that's when I bought my TJ. At the time, it was silver and not yellow. and I bought I bought the Jeep in July of '07. January of '08, I rolled it. In January '08, I bought my TJ, and which at the time was silver, and all I had was a 3-inch lift, 33s, and bushwhacker flares. You know, and that's the rig I've been wheeling forever, and that's the rig everybody really knows as my big dumb yellow one. And that thing's really gone through the motions, and I learned so much on that because when I got into Jeeps, I didn't know how to do my own brakes, and I really leveraged the power of the clubs because back in the day, like, you would join a club, and if you didn't know something, somebody else in the club knew how to do stuff, and they would take you under the wing, and there was a lot of tech days and stuff, so you would show up to a tech day, you would help people when you learned skills, and then and that's kind of how, like, my Jeep got built up, is I went to these tech days, helped out other people and learned the skills, and then I would apply those skills to my own misadventures and misguided upgrades, and back in the day, I actually had like a couple posts on Pirate Hardcore stuff, and thinking back in the day, like, it wasn't hardcore at all, but it was hardcore at the time in my mind because like I was cutting and welding, and so, yeah. But it wasn't like the hardcore, like what people consider that now, where it's like 1-ton swaps and all that.
Yeah, Pirate was something else back in the day, though.
That was my downfall. I got into Jeeps, I discovered clubs, and then I discovered Pirate, and then I was like, I need 42s.
Yeah.
Like, Project Dookie was fucking awesome, and like there's a bunch of them. I was following pretty good, and it's been like probably like 15 years since I've really been on Pirate, so I've forgotten most of the stuff. But like it sucks because like that's such a valuable resource that's just kind of like falling apart because like Photo Bucket being assholes and other various reasons. But
and the thing about it that kills me is like there's so much good technical information there that like you're almost like it's harder now to go back and piece stuff together because like I was looking at some wiring modifications and stuff, and so I'm on Pirate and I'm like trying to piece stuff back together, and this was like a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, it would be really helpful here if I could have a damn picture of what the harness is supposed to look like.
Right?
Instead you get that stupid Photo Bucket, this image has been deleted post, and it's like,
yes.
You assholes. Like, so then I'm like sitting there on my Jeep looking at the harness, and I'm like, all right, cool. This is kind of what I think all right, cool. So I'm just going to put an extra ground here, and an extra ground here, and an extra ground here, because they're all black wires, so it's going to be the grounds. It'll be great. Don't worry about it.
You can't go wrong with having too many grounds. I mean, it's so easy to have weird electrical issues with just one bad ground.
Yeah, that's something I've been teaching myself. I added a extra ground in the cabin, and somehow that fixed my door light sticking on. I don't know.
Works.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but you're going to figure out that we do a lot of tangents here.
No worries.
So you've got the silver TJ. Are you still in Florida? Or are you coming up to New England?
So I wheeled that for a few years in Florida. I've actually, one of the coolest trips I did shortly after going on to like 35s is I took a trip up with the Suncoast Flatlanders up to Georgia. And we went to the River Rock Off-Road Park, and that was awesome. And even like 10 years later, after that, when I was doing like my 1-ton swap, the bottom of my Jeep was still orange. And
yes.
That orange mud gets everywhere.
Yep. So there's a place called 5313, and it's like this. It's the Weenie Hut Jr. version of Ma Bell, basically. But it's $5 to go wheel there, and whatever. But there's just this red clay, and so every time I go to work on the Jeep, it's either the red clay falling off of it from places I didn't know it was at, or the Southern Missouri dust.
Oh, I believe it. It just like glues on there and turns everything permanently orange.
Yeah, and like your heims start being quiet after you hit it. It's weird.
That's too funny.
So basically, that was probably the peak of my wheeling when I was in Florida. And then 2009, I got laid off. And so, being natively from Warwick, Rhode Island, I decided to move back because my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, was also from Rhode Island. So we just packed up and went back to Rhode Island, and that's kind of where I started. I joined up with the Ocean State Jeepsters, and that's when I started doing more of like the more awesome wheeling with rocks. You know, because like the only place in Florida I really went to that had rocks was an old quarry. And there's Alpha and Bravo Pit, and we went to. Been a while. I want to say it was Alpha Pit we went to, and there's some really cool stuff. And my buddy Mike actually, that lives in Rhode Island now, ironically enough, was from Gainesville, and like I actually got pictures of his Jeep at Jeeptoberfest a few years before we left. But he has some really cool videos of his buddy Shane doing like backflips, rolling over off of one of the climbs at Alpha Pit. It's a pretty gnarly place, and with a lot of elevation change for Florida, you know, because it's basically a big ass hole. But it's so when I got to Rhode Island, that's when I started doing a little bit more to my Jeep. I took off the 35s and I did my 37s, and I moved my fenders up, and then I wheeled like that for quite a few years until 2012, where I finally popped my first Dana 30 axle shaft. And at this point, I've actually learned how to do quite a bit of stuff because, like, I taught myself how to do gears. My Jeep was the very first thing I ever re-geared, and by the time I popped that axle shaft, I already put 30,000 miles on my 488s. So I'm pretty proud of that, considering I didn't do any tools. So in my humble opinion, that I think there's actually a lot of forgiveness in gear sets. As long as you're reasonably close, you're probably going to be fine. You know,
yeah, I agree with you. If you kind of have a rough idea of what you're doing, yes. But if you don't, I feel like you could just fuck it up way too easily.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I wish I knew what I knew. I wish I knew what I know now then, because it would have made it a much faster process. When I did my first gear set, it literally took me like 3 days just to do one of them, and that was like 3 8-hour days because it's like you don't know what you're doing. You're making changes that are counterintuitive, and you don't really know what you're doing. And I didn't really do a lot of research. I knew enough to be dangerous, you know, and I was like, I could do this.
And you didn't have setup bearings or any of that stuff, probably.
No, I didn't even have a dial indicator, so it was all like by feel, and it was like, how the fuck do I know what 6,000s feels like? I don't know. I've never done it before. You know, so like hindsight being 2020 is like, what was I even thinking? But it worked out. You know, it's kind of funny. But yeah, so I put like 30,000 miles on those axles, and then I finally popped a Dana 30 chromoly shaft. And that was at the Great American Jeep Rally, and like I was literally like walking the rock pile like it was nothing, and then all of a sudden when my tires touched the grass, it popped. I was like, what the heck? I just walked this.
Talk about a throwback. I forgot about the Great American Jeep Rally.
Yeah, fucking COVID did it in, unfortunately. And that, and the fire departments. I think when COVID slowed it down, they didn't want it coming back in. And then when they were going to do it, the fire department wanted all the tents to be like fire rated and have like the maximum occupancy signs and all this other stupid jazz. I think the town was sick of all the broken down XJs.
Oh, hey. Easy there. Are we? What was it? Sorry, I got Great American Jeep Rally and Go Topless Day confused for a
I
half
thought so.
second there.
So
No, I sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I didn't want to correct you, but yeah, because the Great American Jeep Rally was more of like a car show with like a nasty manure mud pile, and then the Go Topless Day was in Munson, which was always a fantastic time.
Yeah.
Great American Jeep Rally. My memories of that are that I went through the mud pit and my Jeep was overheating on the way home. And I had just finished the 44 and 8 1/4 swap in my XJ in like 2000 and what was that? 15, Richie? 14. And we went there and we like bombed over the baby rock pile like it was nothing, and we thought we were badasses.
Gotta love it.
It sounds like a great time.
Oh, it was the best time.
Best and worst.
Basically, once I popped that Dana 30, I was like, I'm going to do 44s because I already had a 44 in the rear. And my buddy Mike's like, you're fucking stupid. Why are you going to spend all that money? Just do it right the first time and do 60s. I was like, okay. So now I'm thinking about doing 60s, and I was just going to get like the TJ bracket kit and bolt it in with my short arms. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing? It gives me another brain duster. And he's like, just long arm it while you're at it. And then so now a broken Dana 30 turned to 1 tons, long arms, 14-inch coilovers, and
away we went.
yeah, exactly. So that was September, and then so I drove around my Jeep for a couple more months, ordered some stuff, took out a 401k loan. And I'm like, this is a great use of my retirement money. I went on Ballistic and I ordered a whole bunch of stuff. I found a 95 F350 dual rear wheel ball joint 60 that I ended up like converting to single rear wheel and stripping down and all that. And then I found my rear axles out of a 71 Chevy K25, and I stripped that down, welded on a truss, and I rented the tool to bore out the spindles for 35 spline shafts. And apparently I got like a small bearing 60, so I actually ended up having to send the whole axle out to East Coast Gear Supply. They cut the ends off and put new spindles on it so I could run 35 spline shafts with that. And I should have known better, because when I pulled the shafts, they were like 16 spline or something stupid like that.
Oh, dude, that's rough.
And at that point, I was already committed because I already welded my $50 truss on it. So, like, I'm married to it, because $50 is $50,
Dude,
so in 2020, I should have built the 14 bolt, and I should have just cut my losses at the truss. But honestly, that 60's been amazing for me. And those are the second axles I've ever re-geared. I re-geared those axles to 538s. I ended up putting a Grizzly up front, and I had Grizzly's front and rear. Yeah, so I put Grizzly's front and rear in it, and I did the 538s, and I wheeled like that for a while. And I was on 39s for probably like my first season and a half with it. And then I ended up destroying the front locker, and it was just stripping out and stuff. And so when that happened, Cora from Torque Master Industries actually reached out to Sarah. Is like, oh, I got this locker in R&D, which turns out to be a torque locker. So I ended up swapping that in and doing a whole bunch of cool stuff with that. And And I also upgraded to the 43 stickies at the same time, because why not take out a second 401k loan and drop $4,000 on tires?
I feel you on that.
And that's basically how I wheeled it for years. It's I actually wheeled those tires from like 100% tread, and I think I sold them to Eugene Whitford with probably like 20% tread in all the siping in the world. Because I just cut every lug like 30 times, so it's just like little gecko fingers. That Jeep, I feel like I outdrove that Jeep. That Jeep owes me nothing. It has done everything I've ever asked of it and more. Like Bob loves to tell the story about how like I think it was like I was in the top 10 of humble pie finishers, and then I towed it home, unloaded it, and drove it to the local car show and got ice cream with it. Because it was still plated and insured. I'm running humble pie, and I still got a plate on the stupid thing.
Wow, that is really impressive. So now, I don't know. I don't think I've ever met somebody that has run SXs all the way down to almost 20% from brand new. How long? Yeah. How long of a period would you say that was?
So I bought them in 2014. And I got off of them. I sold them to Eugene probably 2020. It was either 2020 or 2021. My memory is trash, unfortunately. But Eugene ended up buying them because he wants to put them on Gary, which I think is going to be sexy as all hell. That truck needs SXs. But so probably 6 years and doing a shit ton of wheeling. Like I probably got like 50 to 100 road miles on it because I would randomly just drive it down to the beach or whatever. But it's most of that rubber's probably in field and forest.
So, how often would you drive that on the road? Just out of curiosity, like 1,500 miles, you said?
Probably like 50 to 100 miles. Once it went on the stickies, I didn't really drive it too much. It was just mostly around town, drive it to the local car shows or whatever. And take the dogs to the beach. Because especially once I bought the box truck, it just lived in there. I just stuck it in there, shut the doors, and it was. What was nice, it was dependable and reliable. I stopped breaking stuff with it really, and I could just beat the balls off of it. And I knew the limits of the machine, so I could operate within its operational envelope. And my last couple breaks were just like I broke a double spline rear axle shaft during Humble Pie a couple years ago, and now I got a 300M double spline shaft in there from Barrette. And then I think I probably only popped like 2, maybe 3 stub shafts in the front, but it's been super reliable, especially after ditching the 300. So
300 deletes.
Yeah, I was running 300 for a hot minute with 4-1, but I never upgraded to output shafts because I was too afraid of the case breaking in half. Because the way the gear cases work is the gears push each other apart, so they're not really super strong. And the cast cases are really good for that type of stress, not like the aluminum cases are. And so I never upgraded the shafts, so I was still running the 26 spline output shafts and 1310 U-joints, and I was going through drive shafts pretty often for a while. And then once I switched to the Atlas, I stepped up to the 1350s and quarter wall drive shafts, and I stopped breaking those. And that's the point where it truly became reliable.
So my only experience with 300s is I got to rent a rig. Not even rent a rig. I was leaving for Tennessee 2 years and a month ago, roughly. And so Miguel goes, "Hey, you want to drive the buggy?" and he's got this XJ Buggy on 43s. I can't remember if they were stickies or not at that time. I think those were SXs.
He knows.
And so I'm like, sure, I got the thing to go into double low because we were having issues with getting it to go into double low. And I got on it on this obstacle at Richie's place called Devil's Den, and it hopped. I broke both outputs, and I thought I'd crack the case. So I ended up buying Miguel a new front output, and I think he had the rear output already. So that's my experience with 300s. I wheeled one for all of 30 seconds and spent about $650 on an output.
Sounds about right.
Lord.
My favorite part about that story, though, was genuinely, I hear him drive out, and I was sitting probably at the entrance to the woods, and all of a sudden he just heard, and it just revved up, and then dead silence, and I'm like, yep, he broke something. And turns out he really fucking did.
Yeah, and when I say I broke both outputs, I mean they're both just hanging there, like not connected to the thing. Clean breaks on both of them.
That's impressive. I've only broken rear output. And it's usually in climbing situations where, like the last one I broke, I was doing the sucker punch climb. And so I forgot what year it was. I think maybe it was year 2 of Humble Pie. And I got up on it, and I got all 4 tires up on it, but it didn't hook, and it slid backwards, and I stayed in it, and the second it touched the ground, it just went snap.
Yep.
Yeah, so Luke was at about a 50-degree angle or so, and he got all 4 tires to just hop up in the air just a little bit. Never took his foot off it, and as soon as the tires touched, just boom.
Yeah.
I wheeled it like I wheeled my XJ. If I had been in my XJ, I would have just stayed in it, and it would have either not hooked or whatever, but the 231 didn't blow up like that 300 did.
231s are remarkably strong for what they are.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I had a 231 for a few years with my 43 stickies, and it's still living on. I sold it, and now it's in my buddy's rig. And that thing never complained once.
So I had a 231 that the original 231 that was in my XJ was not great. Like, I forget what the exact issue with it was. So I had 3 cases. I put together 1 case out of those 3 cases with an SYE in it, and I wheeled that thing for 4 years from 35s auto with a 3-link all the way up to the point where it had the 4-link double triangulated in the rear, manual swap and all that. And it never broke until like last Web Wheelers ball that I went to at Roush. I broke the planetary. Like, it blew a ring of the outer planetary, like the ring gear. It blew a chunk out of that. And
were you still running a 3 or 6 planetaries?
I was running a 3 planetary in it. And it pushed that outer section of the gear out of the case. It still drove, though. Like, fine. It just puked fluid everywhere and made a horrendous noise in 4 low.
It's truly amazing how strong those little things are.
Yeah. And then I ended up swapping. Yeah, so I swapped that afterwards. I wheeled on a different planetary, or like a different front case half with the same rear case half until I put the 241 OR in it.
I'm happy that you ended up making that choice because I don't know, it's something that I was thinking about going to, and so seeing you swap to it is I don't know, it lets me see another side of it, because with like Colin, all he does is just rev limiter the shit out of it, where you kind of do this weird in between. So it's good to see.
Yeah. So we're diverting again. Ricky, do you still have the TJ?
I do.
Good.
So
Good.
currently, the body is sitting on the ground outside of my shop, and I got a fairly clean TJ05 TJ tub on the frame. It's looking a little sad on the rollers, but it looks like a Jeep still, which is good. I kind of jumped into the project really head first and really gun ho for about 6 hours, where I pulled the tub and dropped a new one on, and then I was like, okay, this is awesome. And then that was 2 years ago, and I haven't had the motivation to do anything.
Well, at least it's not gone.
No, my wife would literally shoot me in the face if I got rid of that thing, because I considered it, and she's like, "I'll divorce you and murder you." I'm like, okay. She's eating way too much ramen because of that thing. So my game plan is, I actually sent out an email to Generate because I'm a dealer, so I'm trying to work out a deal. I gotta follow up with them because I haven't heard back. I talked to him. He's like, send me an email. So I sent him an email, and I haven't heard anything. But I got a couple people that want cages, so I think I'm gonna add that onto the order and be like, hey, like, I'm gonna add a bunch of other stuff. Like, what can you do for prices? Because I want about $5,000 worth of Generate stuff. I want to stick on it and like all. And so I'm gonna put a new cage in it because I sold the cage to Cody James. So I'm going to get a new Generate cage, put that in there. I want to do all the aluminum armor and stuff like that. And the game plan is to make a really clean, streetable wheeling rig that's on like 43 DOTs. But I don't want to do field and forest reds anymore. I just want to do blacks and get ice cream. And the goal is to hand it off to my wife, Sarah, and because she loves driving that thing. And I think she'll be really happy if I give it to her. And she's pissed off that it's not a raisin body, but I think she's going to fix that herself. Because she says she's going to just start aiming for trees. And I'm like, don't do that. Like, at least let it happen naturally. Don't force it. It'll happen.
It's way cooler when it's natural, because then everything has like a story to it. It's a lot of fun.
Exactly. It's not like, oh, I hit it because of the blatant disregard. It's like, no, that was the only way I was going to make it over this obstacle and do that. It's like you said, there's a story and there's feeling behind it. You look at it and you touch it and you're like, oh, I remember that.
I've got, I crushed the whole side of the XJ at S'more, and it was like I had to keep momentum going. So it was like, oh, well, I'm going to hit this tree, and it's not what I want to do. But like, if I don't bounce off of this tree, it's not making it up this obstacle.
Or there's a chance that once it bounces that it may hit the tree, and like if you let off, then it hits the tree even harder.
Yes.
And sometimes you need to carry the momentum, because otherwise the tree's going into your windshield. So if you carry it, now it's just denting like near the B pillar.
Yeah. It crushed the door to the point where the window won't roll up and the latch doesn't work, so you have to open it from the inside. It's great.
Your windows don't zip up? Weird.
XJ problems. I'm still poor. I'm not wealthy enough to own a TJ. And I have budget stickies, so...
Well, the nice thing about XJs is they're going up exponentially in price. Like, you can't even get one for $500 anymore.
Yeah, it literally makes no sense. I don't understand why all of a sudden these things just jumped in price.
And people just take their... I've been seeing, like, Facebook ads. They take their $500 Cherokee, they add a zero on it, and then they sell it. It's like, how the hell is that $5,000?
Yeah. I'm not going to say too much here, but, like, Richie and myself were talking on the phone the other day about his XJ and what he's going to do with it, and... Honestly, it might be cheaper for him to find a body down here that's not a Wrangler, or I'm sorry, not a Cherokee, and like buy that and bring it back up there, because it's going to cost less to fix it up than it's going to cost to like buy a decent Cherokee up there.
Seriously, like everything's crazy rotted out here. Like, I got a couple customers that come in for like buying advice, and I'm like, dude, like, look out west. And the few
Mhm.
customers that have listened, they come back with rigs from Arizona or whatever that's never even seen salt. And they're sunbaked, but they are beautiful. And it's a shame that the stuff that we put on the roads just destroys everything. It's
Yeah, especially the new stuff too. The new stuff, this like the actual spray stuff that we put down is wild.
Oh, it's crazy bad. And what sucks is like the JKs, they've held up a lot better than the TJs did. But like I got a JK here that I got to put a floor in, because it's all rotted out. And like I've done frame sections on JKs now. It seems to be limited to the 07s right now, but it's kind of scary.
It's gonna happen to the rest of them.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. They've held up a lot better than the TJs. I've had 4-year-old TJs where I could stick a fist through. Like I've had 2006 TJs probably in my shop around. I don't think I had a shop at that point, but I was helping people do frame repairs, and they were like 4 or 6 years old, and like you could literally just poke fingers in through it. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
So my tow rig. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Richie.
I was gonna say you can take a rig that has like barely any surface rust on it and drive it for one winter. All your fucking fenders are gone. Fucking your frame is falling apart. It's fucking ridiculous now.
Yeah, I got customers with like brand new powder coated bumpers. A year later, like name brand stuff like JCR and stuff, it looks like utter trash a year later, and they spent all the fucking money for it.
And it's not like it's the vendor's fault either.
No, I think people need to start stepping up and actually voicing their opinions, saying, "Hey, we don't want this shit on our roads."
Like you'll never get it to happen. I work for a town, and like if they do not think that they're driving on the beach because of how much salt or sand is on the ground, they're pissed. Genuinely, it is.
All this EPA bullshit going on, I am genuinely surprised the EPA hasn't put their foot down about the stuff we're putting on the roads. How is it like good for the environment? I can't drive my fucking diesel truck without them losing their goddamn minds, but they could spray whatever the fuck they want over the roads. Bullshit.
Got a good point. I mean, I can respect it. It's just a mess, though.
I agree.
I mean,
I forgot where we were.
It's all good. I'm curious on what ecological effect it truly has, though.
Yeah, seriously, the stuff that they spray in upstate New York by my dad's house, like the grass by the roads are dead, like every spring, because whatever they spray, I think it's like calcium chloride or whatever. It's just super corrosive, bad stuff.
It is. It's pretty gnarly stuff for sure.
And it's going straight to our water table. So at some point we're drinking it.
Yeah, that's what filters are for, right?
Yeah.
Listen, not all of us have them fancy dancy filters there, Cody.
Why not?
Because we're poor.
Yeah, shit costs money, dude.
Oh, just kidding. But alrighty, I want to dive into Lemon Drop, man. What in the fuck is wrong with you that you thought putting 39s on Dana 30s? Like, what the heck were you thinking?
Oh, it seemed to hold up the 37s quite well. Yeah, seriously, like, so the whole premise of Lemon Drop. So I basically got my Jeep to the point where I was out driving it. I couldn't make it do any more than it really was. I'm sure there's somebody that's a better driver, like Eugene Whitford or Paul Barnes, got behind the seat. They could probably push it like 10% more. But I'm genuinely convinced I was pushing that machine to its limit of what it can physically do. So that's kind of got me down the rabbit hole of like, okay, I want to build a car, and I want to kind of build it specifically for humble pie. So now I want a rock crawler, but I kind of wanted to go fast. But I also had a very limited budget, and I've also talked for years about how I think Dana 30s are a lot stronger than what people give them credit for. And so I kind of subscribe to the theory that if you draw a triangle and you put three things that break axles, horsepower, weight, and tire size, you take one of those out of the equation, you're going to have a good long, you're going to have a bunch of fun before shit happens, you know? And so that's why I kind of built the Dana 30s. Plus they were free, you know, like I built my entire car for less than $20,000.
Which is nuts.
I got like over 10 grand just in my front Dana 60, you know, like for what guys are spending on a single built 609 with portals. I have an entire car and I'm doing the same shit they're doing, you know. And with the 37 stickies, I was going to do the 39s right off the rip, but I kind of pushed out. I got a little cold feet, and I was thinking about it because the thing with BFGs is they run small. So like a 39 is really a 37, and a 37 is really like a 35. You know, so but I decided to play it safe, and I did 456 in the gears. Because I still had 3 teeth of engagement. Because no, I know what I got, and I'm going to stack the cards as much in my favor as I can. So I did 456 gears. I was going to do torque lockers because I love Cora and Eric. They have a fantastic business, and they make a fantastic product.
I wanted to ask you about them earlier, but I'll save that for later.
But the problem is that the factory Dana 30 carrier, any factory carrier, is a wet noodle. You know, even my Dana 60, I broke my Dana 60 carrier in half, and their locker was still reusable. Stuck in another locker, axle, carrier, boom, up and running again. But I knew that if I stuck with the factory carrier, since it's pretty basically a wet noodle. Under load, it's going to twist, it's going to deflect, and I'm going to have a really bad time. So I made the decision to go with the 30 spline Grizzly lockers because at least then I have a full case. And I didn't want to spend the money on selectables. And I'm a big fan of automatic lockers because it's why overcomplicate something with switches and levers and cables and airlines when it just fucking works. So I ended up doing the Grizzly lockers in it, and I originally started off with the 30 spline TJ shafts in there, and I ran those for the first season, and that's actually what I was running when I went to my first Humble Pie and Put Up and Shut Up and a couple other events. I ended up using a high pinion Dana 30 in the front. I just cut the tubes, swapped them over to make it passenger side drop. The rear axle, I used a TJ Dana 30, so I had the low pinion again, stack everything up in my favor, and I was convinced that I was driver enough to hold it together. Because like you always get those people that are like, oh, like a Dana 30 is not enough for me. I'm like, the way I wheel, I need a Dana 60. It's like, yeah, because you don't know how to fucking drive.
Yeah,
you know, like,
Guilty. Guilty.
That's another talking point of my argument why Dana 30s is that I'm convinced that Dana 30s are way stronger than what people give them credit for. I think where a lot of people get out of Dana 30s is they're breaking Dana 30s because when you first get into wheeling, your first wheeling rig, if it's a Jeep, it's going to have a 30 in it. And you're going to beat the piss out of it, and you don't know what the limits are, and you're going to break it a couple of times, and after a while, you're going to be like, fuck this, and I'm going to go on tons or 44s or whatever. And I think when you're at that point, you're still on the learn phase of how to drive. And by the time you get on 1 tons and then you got like 10 years of experience or whatever, of wheeling all the time, at that point, because it's a bell curve. The learning curve is such a sharp bell curve. It takes you so damn long to get up to the point where you're really experienced and you understand how everything feels, you can feel the binding and stuff. I think when you take a step backwards and you understand the feelings that you're feeling, that you're like, when you let that clutch out and you feel that little twist in the seat of your pants and you're like, oh, that's not good, and you clutch it, like, that's going to keep you alive whether you got a 60 or a 30, So for me, I was confident that I was driver enough to keep it together. But again, like I said, I also subscribe to the fact that it's only got 60 horsepower and it's a flyweight. I when I finished the car, originally it only weighed 2654, something around there. It's sub 2,700 pounds.
What?
With tires on it?
With tires on it.
Nice.
I got a picture on Facebook. So all my build pictures I just put on Facebook, and I just do the hashtag Project Lemon Drop, and I could probably find it, but I'll probably won't be able to find it because I'm actually looking for it.
Yeah.
But it's I tried to make it as light as I possibly could, and I'm sure I'm probably closer to 29 by now because of I swapped out the Yukon axle shafts and I put in RCVs, and then at the same time I took off the TJ knuckles because when the only issue I was having was I kept breaking the 26 spline stub shafts, and every time you break a stub shaft, it would take out the Grizzly locker because it would go from fully loaded to unloaded instantly, and it would strip the teeth. So after taking out 3 Grizzly lockers that way, I switched to the RCVs so I could have the JK outers. So I changed my knuckles from TJ to JK. I'm running JK unit bearings, JK 32 spline outer stub shafts with the TJ 30 spline inner shafts. And that's been working quite well for me. I haven't broken any axle shafts. My weak point is finally the ring pinion where I want it. That's another fun thing about it. It's only $200. If it breaks, it only costs me $200. Like,
that ain't
not a
bad.
big deal. And I don't know, ring pinions don't really scare me. Okay, so I found the picture when I first finished it, 2,652 pounds with me in it.
That's nuts.
What?
That's insane.
Without me in it, 2,490.
You're a little dude then.
Yeah, I'm only 180 with my clothes on.
It's so weird to try to think about that in vehicle. Like, you actually are driving this thing and it's that light. Like, that, it's unfathomable.
Yeah, it's a little too light. So I found that it's my sprung weight and my unsprung weight are too close together, and it likes to roll over pretty good. So that's been a learning curve in itself. Plus, with the rear steer, it's amazing how quickly that'll throw you over when you're trying to climb something. You think you're doing good, you're side hilling a little bit, you just cut the wheel, and then the wheel basically folds over, and then the car just falls over. It's been quite the learning experience it's been humbling, that's for sure, on learning how to drive the rear steer.
Now, was it as different as you thought it was going to be, or did you think it was going to be worse, or?
It's
was
not
the learning curve
as I thought it was going to be, because there's kind of two camps when it comes to. There's two camps of thought when it comes to rear steer. There's the guys that say don't fuck with it and use it only when you need it, and then there's the other group that says use it as much as you can. And that's the group I've been part of. I've just been playing with it as much as I can because I'm a firm believer the fastest way to learn something is to suck. Because like you make mistakes and you remember mistakes. You never remember success. And when I think back in life, all I can remember is all the times I fucked up. You know, you never really think about the stuff that you did good at, because, like, at least for me, I'm super critical on myself. So I'm always like, okay, I'm going to remember that so I don't do that again. You know?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. So if you were to rebuild it again, would you still stick with the 30s, or do you think you'd just bump up and do some 9s?
So, the original plan was to actually build some 9s and stick them underneath there, because the 30s was always supposed to be a cheap experiment. You know, it's short money for me to build them, because I have the unique position of being a shop owner. And so I get a lot of stuff at wholesale. Like, my cost for a ring and pinion and installation kit's like $200. So, like, that was nothing. The Yukon shafts cost me $700 a set, and then, like, I got everything frozen from my buddy from Fireball Heat Treating in Attleboro, and, like, it was cheap. Like, I probably had like maybe like $3,000 to $4,000 into building 2 axles. You know, so, like, I was going to run the car a few years like that, and then my game plan was to start collecting parts and build, like, some 40 spline stuff. But things kind of changed. The car's getting a little beat up from, like, rollovers and put up and shut up and X-Rock and stuff like that, and Humble Pie. It's starting to... There's a couple tubes that I really should cut out and replace, but... what ended up happening was I had a couple guys approach me about buying a chassis, so I went through all the headache of because as I was building this car, I have an as-built Bentec file, and then I have a 2.0 Bentec file. So as I was building the car, I was figuring out the stuff that I wasn't smart enough to think about ahead of time and making small tweaks. So when somebody approached me about buying the chassis, I was already kind of there. So I went through this hassle of finding somebody. It turns out I ended up hiring Travis from Welder D to CNC cut, notch, and bend chassis for me. And then by the time that got shipped out and stuff, things changed, and the people that were interested in the chassis ended up going to Nate Gilbert, and he made them some amazing rigs. Because Nate, he's a fantastic craftsman and really skilled builder. Like, I have a lot of respect for Nate. And if I was lazier, I would just hire him to build me a new one. But I have this chassis now. So I got this chassis that I didn't sell, and it's kind of a 2.0. So I decided I'm going to build another car. I'm going to leave this one exactly as it is, and when it's done, when my other car is done, I'm probably going to sell this, because this thing's going to be an amazing wreck wheeler. You know, I've proven that it can do whatever if it's point and shoot. If you want to drive it, you can do it. You know, it doesn't really have the horsepower to break stuff, and as long as you're not bouncing or binding or wheel hopping, like, shit's going to hold up, because it's binding and shock loading is what's going to break these axles. Other than that, like, it's just going to go, you know. By the time it starts twisting up and it's not happy, the engine's stalling, you know. Like, I can barely turn the wheels with the engine idle.
So it's kind of the perfect storm for everything that was involved with it. It works very well, so I can respect why, like, the 30s are still working for you.
Yeah.
I think if it was an automatic, though, I don't know if you'd be having as much fun, because you probably wouldn't have as much driver feel to, you know, make decisions like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's kind of always been my argument with automatics, because I don't know, I haven't truly wheeled automatics, but, like, I've driven them around and climbed tires and rocks and stuff like that. This is going to sound really stupid being a stick shift guy. I don't like driving with 2 feet. You know, because, like, you got to load it up, but you got to be on the brakes a little bit, and then you got to you got to load it up, and then once it gets to the point where it's finally climbing, and then you got to get ready with the brakes, because otherwise it's just going to launch over the rock you're just powered over, you know. And I just don't like how that feels. I like the feel of like I could let the clutch out and I could feel the whole car twist, and like I don't even have to let it out all the way. You can just feel it, you know.
Oh,
Mhm.
120%. As the other manual guy in this call, I gotta step up and
Yeah,
defend the manuals.
yeah.
Um,
Alrighty, Buster.
I like having the manual myself because it's just options, right? Like my XJ's got, the 125 horsepower, but I know where it's going to do what it's going to do until I put the 241 in it. I'm still figuring it out now. But like I make the joke that I can break a 60 on demand because I know where it's going to break the 60, and you can feel when it goes to like launch up an obstacle how much bind you're putting into it, and it's great. Um, the only thing that I want to do is I want to put in, I'm sure you've seen them, the drift style brakes. I want to put that on the rear axle so that way I can have a freer use of my feet, because I definitely use both feet when I'm driving stick.
So I can understand that. I use a hand throttle. Even with the lemon drop, I got a handle welded up on between the A and B pillar. That kind of sticks out sideways because I found myself wrapping my hand around the exterior tube, and I was like, that's a terrible idea. So I welded a handle there, and I ended up putting an ATV thumb throttle there, and that's been amazing because then like I got a nice steady spot to plant my hand, hold my body up, and the hand throttle makes a big difference. Even with the TJ, I always had like the Terraflex hand throttle on the shifter because then you could work the clutch and brake, and then you could have that little extra throttle control that you need. Because I've never really been good at doing that side foot thing that some people do.
Oh, the heel toe.
Yeah,
Dude,
Yeah.
there's only one vehicle that I've ever been able to do it in, and it's a Subaru. Every other vehicle, I cannot like rotate my foot well enough for it. It's so weird.
It's hard, especially in a Cherokee.
I've only figured it out once. My buddy Gene taught me how to do burnouts, and that's the only reason why I know how to do it is doing burnouts in my diesel Jeep.
Hey, I mean, if there's a good reason to learn it, it's to learn how to do burnout. So I can
Exactly.
respect it. So the reason why I'm really interested with your ideas for lemon drop and why you feel so confident about certain things makes me nervous for the rig that I've been potentially looking at purchasing, which is a friend of mine. He built a buggy, 30 front, 30 rear, low pinion rear. I believe it's
Nick
456.
Jonard's buggy. I believe he's talked with
Oh,
you.
Nick's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the thing is though, it's an automatic and it's a 4.0. So the two like big factors that like from listening that your exact reasons of why the 30s have lived, this doesn't have. So it's interesting that well, thank God the chassis is not big enough for like a V8 if I were to purchase it down the line, because then, obviously I'm gonna wanna, because why not? But I'm curious on, obviously we don't have to speak exactly on Nick's buggy, but what's your ideas and thoughts on that?
So, again, it's really about knowing the operational envelope of what you're working with. It's like you're going to have a little bit more of a pow than I do, having twice the horsepower or maybe even 3 times the horsepower, but like you don't really have to use that much of your foot,
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is like, I'm pretty sure, didn't he cut out a whole bunch of the rig to lighten it up a bit?
He cut a bunch of stuff out, and he's also reworking the B pillar to make it a little more structural and save some of the tubing.
Yeah, and so I think it would be a good stepping stone, and even if it doesn't work out forever, it'll still work long enough for you to start collecting parts to build a 44. Because you can put a 44 back there and be quite happy with it. Especially with like a low pinion 44, because that was you're driving on the quote correct side of the gears, and then I don't know, I don't think you could go wrong with it. The parts are cheap, it's easy to service, and if it does break, it's like you could probably fix it out there in the woods super easy.
That's a good point. I don't know if I would do a 44 though. Like I have an 05 plus 60, and I heard that I believe the Chevys are low pinion 60s. So I'm contemplating ended up swapping to something like that, but then takes up the consideration where the weight is a huge factor in that, and then the axles are going to be heavier than the body, and I don't know.
You kind of want your weight heavier than the body, and that kind of brings me up to the point where my rig's too even between my sprung and unsprung weight. If I had more weight, it'd be more stable. Down low, obviously.
Yeah, that's like with my rig, I'm really happy with the fact that I have so much weight down low between the Trust 10.5 and the Trust 60, plus the extra width of them. You've been in my rig when I've been getting silly with it. That rig's very stable.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I don't know. It's
a lot of food for thought. The only reason why I suggested a 44 is so you could stick with 5-lug front and rear. Because if you do a 60 in the rear now, you got to figure out what you're doing for the front.
I was probably going to do a 60 front as well.
Yeah, if you're doing one, you might as well do the other.
Correct.
Yeah. And I believe Nick's Buggy is currently set up with both of the axles not having had their tubes flipped like your Buggy is. So my thoughts on that would just be run 205 pluses, because it's not like with a 4.0 and how light that chassis is. I think it's like mid 3, or sorry.
It's low 30. I think it's like 3,300.
31 with no one in it. He just texted me because I asked him.
Yeah, so that's pretty damn light. That's at least 1,000 pounds lighter than it was coming out of the factory.
Yeah. So you put 260s on there with the way that it's set up, you're not going to hurt it. And if you're really concerned about the 05 plus 60 in the rear, put the 10-inch ring gear kit in there with the bigger pinion and run 1550s in both of them.
Yeah, but doesn't it separate the pinion from the ring gear in that rotation?
It's running on the coast side of the gear, but high pinion rear axles have been a thing for quite a while, and they've been raced in like King of the Hammers. They don't Ricky, correct me wherever I'm wrong, because you probably know more about this than I do. They don't like a lot of high-speed stuff, so you're not going to want to run it at 75 miles an hour, but it's a crawler.
Yeah, you're not driving fast enough to really make a difference. And I don't know the exact numbers. Like, technically, they're stronger on the drive side of the gear, but, it's a lot more axle than you really need.
Yeah, I think it's a 25% loss, but, a 25% loss on a 10-inch ring gear.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I might as well do it right though. If I know an easy option, which yes, an 05 plus and just running it and doing it is an easy answer. But if I can do the right thing, might as well. I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of dumb to just jimmy rig it or half-ass it at that point.
Yeah, definitely don't half-ass it. Whatever you do, full-ass it.
Exactly.
The bougie thing to do would be to get a 14-bolt steer axle with 05 plus 60 outers on it. So that way you keep the same shafts and you get the extra bougie bulk.
I'm playing with the idea of, because I want to make a hybrid axle, I'm kind of playing with the idea of doing 05 plus outers for the steering, but doing a Toyota 10.5 for the center section, because those things are serious beef. And the cool thing about them is the pinion is almost center of the housing.
That is true,
and it's way higher than a 9-inch, and it's higher than a 16 or 14 bolt. It'll give me a good pinion angle, and Toyota stuff's just magical. I don't quite get it, but I put Toyota Tundra drive shafts in the lemon drop just because I had one on my lift. We were doing a lift kit or something, and I noticed how much the angle, how much angle the draw shaft had on a factory Tundra, I was like, yep, that's what I'm using. Like it goes, I don't even know what the angle is, but it's retarded because like I got 18-inch travel shocks and I could do the I have full range without them binding.
Damn.
Yeah. It's stupid.
Does your rig ever feel like bobbleheaded, if you will, with that long of a shock on that narrow of a rig?
It doesn't really. I'm kind of on like my second suspension iteration with it. My first one, I did what everybody does with the rear axle and brought the uppers to almost a point, like 4 inches apart or whatever, on the axle side. And I was having a lot of body roll under load, so like I could drive down the road and like anytime I accelerated, it would just twist. Because of that, I ended up putting on an anti-rock, and that helped out with stability, and that helped out a lot. And there's a lot of benefits to an anti-rock, but it also helped make up for my shortcomings of being dumb on suspension design.
Question on that: were your lowers fairly like parallel in the rear?
Like parallel to the uppers?
So no, parallel to each other. Like your rear, your lower control arms in the rear. Were they parallel to one another?
No, I gotta find I think they go in about. So right now I have literally the bare minimum triangulation upper and lower to hit that magical 30 or 45 degrees, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I want to say my lowers go in probably about 15 degrees.
Okay, because I remember we were speaking with somebody not too long ago, and he was having a very similar issue where if he went up onto an obstacle with one tire and then went under throttle, it like almost wanted to just flip over on itself. And he would say the similar thing about being on the road was that like if he would turn on throttle, it would just like I don't know, like roll over almost like a fat cow. And I figured I don't know if it was something similar to you.
I'm not sure. What I ended up doing was I talked to Mike Catrini at Fall Crawl or Wheeling for Warriors, one of those two events, and I kind of came up with the idea that the problem was my upper link geometry. And when I talked to him, he's like 100% yes, and he gave me some pointers. He's like, you need to take these uppers on the axle side, spread them out as much as you can. So I ended up taking them from like 4 inches to like 16 inches apart, and that made a huge difference. That really made a huge difference. And like I said, I spread them out as much as I could, because like there's I wish I knew this off the top of my head, but I want to say it's like out of 30 or 40 degrees of total separation between the upper and lower arms that you need to keep the axle centered underneath the vehicle like safely. And I actually made a spreadsheet and punched in the numbers and figured out that I could spread it out to exactly 16 inches and have exactly the bare minimum. And when I did that, it got a lot better, because now like I can do a brake stand and the rig doesn't fall over anymore. You know, because before I could load up on the brakes and it would just lean and lean and lean. And now like it twists a little bit and then it stops. It's a lot happier now. Like I said, I only know enough to be dangerous. I really have no idea what I'm doing 90% of the time. It's just kind of like, oh, this seems like a cool idea. Let's do it. And most of my experience and knowledge is mostly from me making dumb mistakes and realizing, okay, I should have done it this way. You know, it's I learn everything the hard way.
Yeah, I feel that. I did the exact same thing when I did my 4-link build, but I have a massive amount of separation at the upper control arms, and also the lowers are, I want to say that my lowers at the frame side are like 2 feet apart or 3 feet apart, something like that. They're fairly wide, so the rig's I was able to get the it felt like the rear axle was just kind of loose under the rig is how I'm going to describe it, because the body would follow the front axle, and with the coilovers I was able to adjust the preload down, and that really conquered that to the point where it's comfortable to drive it down the road now, and it's comfortable, much more comfortable wheeling. But I'm also not as light and, narrow.
Yeah, and like Katrina said, it's really hard to figure out the right geometry for stuff because like you don't know your exact center of gravity. That like the 4-1 calculator is basically useless. Garbage in, garbage out. You know? So it's a lot of it's kind of like precision guesswork and educated guesses. At least for me, because I'm not like an engineer or nothing. I'm just some guy doing some stuff.
Did we lose him?
But
oh, sorry.
Nope.
No, I trail off. I'm good. I'm pretty good for trailing off.
Oh, that's fair. Now you've ran Lemon Drop in what has it been? 2 humble pies?
Yeah. So I finished my first humble pie. My second one, I actually didn't finish because during qualifying, I was my buddy Mike. It was his first year, so we teamed up to qualify, and so we were doing the trails together. We were on Sucker Punch right before the climb, and I'm just tooling around, and then all of a sudden I hear on the comms is like, "Stop! Mike lost the wheel." So I stopped my rig and I stop on I park it on 4 points of a rock. So like each tire's on its own point. And I shut the car off, I hop out, and I help him put his wheel on, and he had a wheel spacer. So we ended up taking the wheel spacer up, bolting the wheel on to just a wheel mounted surface. And so it was a super easy fix, up and running. I run over to my rig, I hop back in, I push the clutch. I pushed the brake and then I pushed the clutch to start it, and the rig lurches about it moves about like a half an inch, and then all of a sudden it slides sideways. And when it slid sideways, I actually came down on my rear pinion yoke with a rock and sheared my pinion off.
That's not great.
Yeah, it was amusing because like at that point I still haven't broken a ring and pinion in the day and 30, and I had probably over 50 hours of wheeling, and because I put an hour meter on the car, and it only counts up when the car is running, and I don't let it idle, and it's not like I'm driving around to go get groceries or something, so it's 50 hours of straight up wheeling and doing crazy hard shit, and that happens. It was amusing, but that was actually a very memorable humble pie for me because what ended up happening was I was able to actually switch gears and focus on getting him through his first humble pie, and I'm pretty happy that we finished it. I got him all the way to the finish line with time to spare, and I don't know where we placed, but it didn't really matter because it was about just getting it done.
So, now that you've ran the 2 humble pies in Lemon Drop, what would you have done differently in regards to minor tweaks and things like that you know now?
What I will tell you, going from 43s on a TJ to my rock crawler Lemon Drop on 37s, completely different ball game. So with my TJ, I've done that. I've finished humble pie, the bounty run, in 25 minutes with the TJ. It was fast. I think one year I was 5th place with a TJ. But 43s roll over a lot of shit. So it was a lot of just carry a little bit of momentum, and I could roll over stuff. The 37s, I will tell you, even with the day and 30s being how small they are, I found every bloody rock between the start line and the finish line. Because, you can't go fast with it. So the car's not fast because it just doesn't have the tire size. If you want to be competitive in humble pie, you need 42s. Like even with the 39s this year, I bet you I'm not going to be fast. The 39s from going from 37s to 39s is a world of difference. I'm not catching rocks anymore like I was, but I know I'm still not going to be as fast as these guys that are just on the 42s. So like if I was going to do anything differently, it would have been to build a car that I could actually support a good tire size for that actual competition. Like I said, I'm playing with the idea of building some Toyota 10.5s with 05 plus outers, just to kind of mix it up. It should be interesting with that because then I'll have a super beefy ring gear, a really good pinion angle, because the pinion comes off the center pretty much, and then like 50 degrees of Sarin. I think that's going to be a pretty good combination. And then the only thing I won't have is the ground clearance that the Portal guys are having.
So, one thing that I wanted to just say, it's kind of cool to talk with you about Lemon Drop just because it's like that has been the epitome of the humble or the F&F buggy, I'm going to call it, or like the sequence of events that like you kind of watch people that wheel F&F go through is, you know, you'll see these really, really built up Jeeps and then they're getting rid of them and they're going to lighter and lighter rigs. And I think Lemon Drop is like the quintessential, just about as light as you can go for a rig.
Yeah. It's been kind of interesting because like I've noticed it myself, and what actually got me in the mindset of doing a Suzuki buggy was Eugene with the Blueberry. You know, it's perfect and so fitting that he won like the first humble pie because people were going up with like $50,000-$60,000 buggies, and he's got this like shipbox Samurai. It's literally just a frame, a roll cage, and a pair of Toyota 6 inches on. I think he was running 42s that year, and just beating the snot out of it. And like, it's nothing to write home about as a rig, but like he was putting on a clinic with that thing, you know. And that's what inspired me to do it because I was watching him beat the balls out of Toyota 8 inches 42s. I was like, okay, like that really solidifies my idea for Dana 30s, and I wanted to be a flyweight because Blueberry's pretty damn light, even though it's still like got a full Samurai frame underneath it.
So, do you have any regrets about leaving the heavier stuff behind?
I will tell you, I do not. So, after wheeling all year with Lemon Drop for the first year, I usually volunteer for fall crawl, and I was leading Summit Street that year, and I took to TJ, and like, dude, I was so pissed off because now it's you get really spoiled in a really light rig that's really nimble. You know, it's just if I wanted to go somewhere, I could get there. And being so light, it doesn't have to work. I'm not lifting 4,600 pounds of weight up and over stuff. I'm lifting half that weight, so it just works less. I have zero regrets going super light. For doing the type of wheeling I want to do, I don't think I'll ever go back to something over 3,000 pounds.
Wow. It's kind of cool to see such a massive change. I mean, you'd say like the quintessential standard is well over 3,000 pounds, and for you to be so excited about under, it's just really cool to hear. And it's a totally different experience and mindset. I love it.
And I think my game plan for the next car is, like I said, build axles that could handle some partying, and mainly put all the weight into the tires. You know, if I got to add water to keep it more stable, that's the game plan. Because I did experiment with water last year with the 37s. I put them half full, and it was doing some really cool stuff. with half full tires of water, but that's also shortly before
Catastrophe.
Yeah, it's because I was running tires half full of water when I was doing X Rock last year, and fun thing about competing is, in my experience, time kind of slows down. So like I feel like I'm taking my time, but then when I watch the video afterwards of me driving, I'm like, holy shit! Like, what am I doing? Like, it just like I'm driving all erratically and fast, and it's like, dude, I'm not even trying to crawl. Like, but in my mind, when I'm driving, I'm crawling. So anyway, like I wasn't doing super well with X-Rock getting my gates and stuff because I get denied on a bunch of stuff because I was driving like a dumbass. And I was like, you know what? There's this one gate I could definitely get. And all I gotta do is drive off this 15-foot cliff. So, and I had the brilliant idea, hindsight being 2020, not a good idea. I was gonna drive off of it and hook the tree with my rear axle, which I did successfully. And then I threw it in reverse and I cut my wheel a little bit in the rear and drove up about 6 inches. And then as soon as that tire cleared that tree, it fell over sideways, tomahawking the tire right into the rock, and that hit pretty hard because of all the additional water in the tire. And I will tell you, once you break a tire off that's full of water, it really sucks to move around.
Yeah.
You know, it's it took like 3 of us to pick it up and put it on the roof so I could drive it out.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and then
man.
fell off halfway out, and yeah.
I haven't even thought about that idea. That's hysterical. Now, it still blows my mind that these Dana 30s are surviving even with water in the tires. Like my brain cannot understand.
There's a little bit of magic and trickery that I did. So obviously I cryogenically froze everything. Because one of the guys in my off-road club, Rhode Island Trail Slayers, Tommy One Ton, owns Fireball Heat Treating, and he does a lot of black magic with cryogenically freezing stuff. So I sent off all my internals to my 30s to him, and he froze everything. He's super supportive of the build too. Like, he's giving me crazy good deals with freezing stuff, and like I gotta force him to take money. You know, it's crazy. But so I froze everything. The other thing is I initially set him up super tight on the backlash, but when I re-geared it last, I'm actually running a negative backlash, which a lot of people are going to be like, how the hell do you get a negative backlash? That's impossible. But it's simple math. So when you're setting up a gear set, if you move the carrier 10 thousandths of an inch, you're going to change the backlash by 7. So what you do is you set up the ring and pinion like you normally would. You get all happy. You get your little I kind of set my gears up deep. So I kind of get like that slightly frowny face in my gear pattern. I'm like, awesome. And then what I do is I take 20 thousandths from the non-ring gear side, move it to the ring gear side to shove that ring gear straight into that pinion because it's going to deflect. So why not make it deflect to its optimal running point? And so that's the general idea. And I can't even take credit for this because I stole this idea from a guy that rolls with Eric and Cora, a guy named Smike. He does this for his KOH car, and he went from breaking ring and pinions during the race to wearing them out. So I was like, you know, if it's good enough for a KOH, I'll do it. And it's crazy because when you put it together, you can't even turn the pinion. Like once it's fully bolted together, like I need a wrench with a 3-foot handle to turn my pinion around. And that's been working quite well.
My brain hurts.
Okay, so like I get where you're going with that, And it makes sense to me. You're essentially shoving the gear into the pinion, so it's got less availability to deflect. Does that explain it better, Cody?
Yeah,
Correct.
it's just to my brain. It like, okay, you push it in closer. Now it's gonna add more heat because then now you're having more material touching, and it's gonna like.
But the gears are moving slow. They're not moving like you're doing 75.
That is true, but you mentioned that some guy does that with Ultra 4, and like, I don't know. It's too much. This is crazy.
Yeah. At one point, I was actually playing on. I actually got some Yukon hardcore covers that I had machined. I was going to extend the bearing cap bolts through the cover and turn the cover into a girdle to keep the bearing caps from deflecting too. But those are still sitting in my toolbox, and I haven't really felt the need to finish that project.
That sounds like absolute hell to change your diff fluid and check on shit.
Well, I'm only changing it when shit breaks, so it don't matter to me. If it holds up, I mean, gear oil is good for like 30,000 miles. That'll last the rest of my life if nothing breaks.
Sound logic.
So now, how did you learn that with the differential? Like, was it trial and error? Was this somebody kind of brought this idea to you? Was it
What
something
do
that
you
you
mean,
just...
like the math, or?
No, with the idea of shoving the pinion closer to the ring gear, pardon me, the ring gear closer to the pinion, like, I don't know, it just, like, it's something that goes against most builder code, if you will.
It's really counterintuitive, and I get that. Because when I first heard about it, it was like, what?
Yeah, and just...
like, I actually forgot about it for like probably 5 years, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this.
Holy shit, it's just, that's so fucking cool. Now, are you nervous that with the 39s you're going to experience a bit more than the 37s? Like, obviously, yes, you're probably intending it, but how much more are you planning on seeing breakage with the 39s? Because, like, anybody that knows you or knows about you mentions it. It's like, dude, did you hear that Ricky just put 39s on Lemon Drop? It's like, dude, it's like this like crazy thing. Like, do you think you're gonna have much of a difference?
Time will tell. So I did finally break my first ring and pinion, and it was basically on my second run with the 39s. But who knows how much stress that thing's been under? Because I've literally watched that ring and pinion in the front. 2 years ago, I put up and shut up where I was bound, where I fell into like this crevice, and I was winching and driving as hard as I could to get out of it. I was literally watching my drive shaft. I let the clutch out. It would spin about 3 times. And I let the clutch back out, and it would spin 3 times the other way. You know, so
oh my gosh,
who knows how much? And like, I'm pretty sure the teeth were probably compromised on that. So I'm confident that I think if I can get if I can get the rest of the season out of my next ring and pinion that I can install, I'll be happy. My life expectancy for ring and pinions is probably a season, and that's kind of what I accepted that when I built it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Which is honestly, that's really not that bad in all honesty.
Because right now, the car's got 87 hours of runtime on it, and 87 divided by 2. So basically, I average like 43 hours a year driving this thing, which is a fair amount of wheeling when you think about it. Because like I said, the car doesn't run except for when it's moving down the trail. You know, I never let it idle. You know.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially with being a propane rig, it's just got. I'm lazy. I don't want to carry a 33-pound tank that far.
That makes sense.
I did, however, put in a camp bottle adapter so I could turn a three-way valve and screw on a 1-pound bottle and drive out on that. So that's my game plan if I ever run out of. That's how I move it around the shop a lot. It's just put a 1-pound bottle on.
That's not a bad idea.
So,
Yeah.
when did you do this? Did you build it with propane or did you swap it to propane?
No, I built it with propane. So I originally bought the donor chassis from some dude in Pennsylvania, and it came with propane. So I paid like $1,000 for it. I bought a propane kit that came with a Samurai chassis, and I actually didn't really use much of that because I ended up doing a turbo. So I reached out to Got Propane, and then he's like, "Send me your stuff," and then he's like, "Oh, you need different stuff." Because he was gonna hop it up, and then he realized the stuff I had was too small, so he sold me more stuff and sent all my stuff back. So I basically got the only thing I really reused is like the tank and the hose and the Samurai engine. Because I swapped on. I took the 5-speed off the Samurai and I put it on a Geo Tracker 5-speed because I used the Geo Tracker 5-speed, and then I took the low range box off of the transfer case, cut the front output off, plated that, and so that's a 1.8, and that goes doubled into my 6.5-to-1 Samurai case, which is also cryogenically frozen, and then that goes off to the axles. So my low range is like 200-to-1 in low first.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
I drive around mostly in like just 6.5-to-1 and putt around in like second or third gear. And then when I want to crawl, I go into first. And when I want to do technical, I'll drop down to like double low first.
So sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
So that's kind of interesting. Like, it might just be the difference in driving style, but I find 4-to-1 to be annoying. Like, that's got to be something else to wheel. Like, do you end up spending a lot of time in like fourth or fifth?
So I can pretty much shift. I shift between obstacles. So once I clear something, I just put my doubler back, and then I'll wheel around in like 6.5-to-1 in third gear. So being a stick shift, I could start from fifth gear. It doesn't really matter. You kind of pick a gear and drive it, and especially since I drive it like a tractor, I straddle the transmission like a tractor. I got 2 pedals on one side and 1 pedal on the other. Yeah, it's just the gears doesn't really bother me because I just start off in third or fourth, depending on the need. I just pick a gear for the task at hand and go for it.
All right.
So going to Windrock is pretty much like out of the picture for that rig.
I don't know. I've just driven it to Dunkin' Donuts. It does at least 30. I know that.
What? But okay, all right. But then that leads me back to the whole thing about the ring and pinion. I don't know. I feel like then you're doing more damage just trying to go a little bit faster. I don't know, man. This is so like against everything that I would normally think about. I don't know. It's just so weird.
I guess that makes sense because you can just put it into straight 1-to-1 and then run whatever your transmission gearing ratios are. But so the reason I'm asking is like I don't use first anymore, and I only have 4-to-1, and like seconds sometimes too low and thirds too sendy. So like I don't know. It's just weird to me, and like I'm not used to cruising around the trails in fifth and wishing that I had like 6. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's also like I'm talking about.
We're not really going that fast either. Like I don't know. Most of my wheelings at field and forest, so it's not like you're going fast, and the obstacles everything's basically on top of each other. It's kind of a unique environment because it's not like down south or out west where things like miles apart. I don't really have that issue. It's just you drive 20 feet and you're on the next boulder. The longest drive I have is to go from my campsite to the trail entry.
I also probably would have had a different set of thoughts on that if my shifter hadn't broken, so it wasn't like locked into low range.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you need to be able to shift. And that would drive me
Yeah.
crazy. Like,
Well,
I was having problems with my doubler not shifting, and that was driving me crazy. Luckily, all I had to do is weld like a piece of metal onto the shaft because my shifter. I kind of made a shifter with a wrench, and then by the time it pulled out, the wrench would pop off the shaft, and it wouldn't fully reach the full shifting point. Sometimes, I don't know. That was enough of a headache. Had to fix that quick.
I ran into an issue where so my cross member uses a poly bushing mounted like sideways, so it's cross bolted instead of, giving it the ability to rotate. It limits it pretty good. What I was not expecting was that it would start picking the motor up. So with the OEM mounts I had in there, it would allow the drive shaft to come up and hit the shifter, and it bent the shifter, so I had to disconnect everything and just run it as is. I modified the geometry and put different motor mounts in to hopefully counteract that from happening again.
Or you just start twisting the front or unibody rail, but it'll be fine. Don't
Oh, it
worry
already
about
does
it.
that.
It's
And-
fine.
Maybe switch over to a cable shifter.
So I've thought about that. I just have a weird situation because I have a JK241.
Okay.
So I don't know what I would do as far as running that cable. Would that be something where like I would get a JK shifter and try and make a JK shifter work on the AX, or would I get a TJ shifter?
You really just need like a bracket to hold the cable and the cable sheath still, so you could have the push-pull cable attached to the rod, because the JKs, they shift off of a cable shifter from the factory. It shouldn't be that hard to adapt it. It's really you just need to make a tab to hold the cable at the transfer case side, and then obviously a cable shifter bracket for the handle side. Take a look at like the not ASI, take a look at like the Novak cable shifters and maybe see if you could rip off an idea of how they did it,
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at it. I've got the mechanical feeling pretty good, and I don't think my motor's going anywhere anymore because I just put in a set of poly motor mounts with the Iron Man brackets. So, like, I've got the 12 bolts aside or whatever the fuck it is, per motor mount, and it's now solidly in there. Like, it spread the frame rail, or I had to get the frame rails to spread to accept it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like fun.
Yeah, that unibody's a little tired.
Oh, they do move around quite a bit.
Yeah. I do apologize for my little disappearance in there. I got a quick phone call I had to take. So I don't know if we've talked about your business, but
it's funny you say that because I was just thinking about that. It's like I was just thinking like, all right, let's talk about this. So now, alrighty, what made you start Barrette Fabrication and make it into what it is today?
So the business kind of happened by accident, to go back to kind of like how I got into the sport. What ended up happening is like I got into the sport. I joined the club, and then I had guys take me under their wing and teach me their skills and stuff. And then at some point, the coin kind of flips, and then you start taking people under your wing and teaching them the skills you have or helping them and do whatever. And then it was right around the time where I started doing my 1-ton swap. I started renting garage space because up to that point I was doing everything in a dirt driveway. And like as fancy as I would get would be like a piece of plywood for my jack stand and like a blanket to lay down on. That was living the high life. And so once I started renting garage space, at that point, like I had enough skills and competent enough to do like my 1-ton swap and stuff like that. And and I was doing a bunch of work for people for free, like helping them with the frame repairs and stuff. Like it's just friends helping out friends, But once I started running garage space, and when people wanted help, I was like, yeah, if you want to do it at the shop, just kick me like $20 an hour, just so I could pay for the building, And it's just money is tight, and like anything helps, And that kind of just slowly snowballed into a business. It's just you're doing one job, and then you get another one, and next thing you know, like your side gigs. You're like, I was working at an electric boat at the time, and right before I quit my job, I was waking up at like 4 a.m. going to work, and then I get out at like 3 to 6 o'clock, go straight to the shop, and then I stay there till like 11 or midnight and go back to bed, sleep for 4 hours, go back to work. I don't know how I did it. And thinking back is like crazy, but I mean, you do what you do. And at that point, I had quite a bit of work, and I was starting to become at that point, I actually incorporated, and I started doing stuff. And it was my buddy Mike Nelson who coined the term Barrette Fabrication for the business name. And I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. I'm going to use
like the name.
Love it.
Because like the general idea was that at the time I was trying to do cage work and stuff like that, so the name made sense. Because like you think about like Ballistic Fabrication and other companies with fabrication in the name, but recently I started pushing the name Ocean State Off Road, which was actually Bob Swinski's business back in the day. And when I was thinking about it, I actually reached out to him, and he's like, dude, like I would love it if you took that name. So I got his blessing, and I filed for a DBA. So $40 later, now Ocean State Off Road and Barrette Fabrication. So it's kind of weird that I got two names, but I'm slowly kind of phasing. I'm trying to push like the installation side of things, the lift kits, the wheels, the tires, more so on the Ocean State Off Road Facebook page, whereas like the Barrette Fabrication, I think the last post is probably I did the customer's Jeep JL 2019 JL. We cut the cage off and did a generate cage in it. So I was posting that on the Barrette Fabrication side. So I'm trying to treat it and push the business in two different angles like that. So like one side for doing like fabrication, frame repair, and one side more so for like installs. And because when you search for Jeep shops, Barrette Fabrication doesn't really pop and scream, hey, I build Jeeps, but yeah, Ocean State Off Road screams, hey, bring your Jeep, bring your Gladiator, bring your Bronco, whatever, we're going to make it big and badass.
Yeah, so we've got a similar situation down here. There's a company called Scorpion Off-Road, and they do like everything, supposedly. But then there's a shop called Two Brothers, and Two Brothers does beautiful work, but you're not going to think to bring stuff to Two Brothers, because Two Brothers Automotive, what do they do, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like two dudes just working on a Honda Civic to me.
Yeah, basically.
Right?
Yeah, they do everything from like building cage parts to like diesel truck stuff, and you would never know unless you go in there.
And that's kind of like the other thing is like I've actually done surprisingly well, and it's really thanks to the guys that work for me. They really bust their balls, and they care about what they do. And because of that, we don't really have to advertise. We get almost all our business word of mouth.
Yeah, that's the best type of business to get, is it not?
It really is. And what's nice is with as much as I hate Facebook, it's such a great tool from a business perspective, because like if I want to advertise something, I got like all these groups that are Jeep specific. And so I got this niche group with 15,000 people, like Jeeps and Mass. There's like 15,000 people in there, and they're all there because they like Jeeps. And so I could be like, hey, like, I'm running a lift kit special, and I could share it to that. And like, so now all of a sudden you get a very targeted audience, and I'm $0 out of my pocket, you know?
Yeah.
And the clubs have been a huge resource as well. A lot of the Ocean State Jeepsters members have given me a lot of support over the years with business. And even a lot of the NEA clubs, I get people from random areas coming down to me to do stuff just because they heard of it through the NEA, you know. It's really been a humbling experience because like I don't think I'm the best mechanic in the world or whatever, but what I do is I do my best. And at the end of the day, I think that's all you can really ask of anybody is that when you have somebody doing something on your rig, that they're going to do the best they physically can. And they're going to treat it like yours, you know, and like stupid mistakes happen. And some of my best customers are like super loyal to us because we fucked up and made a mistake on their rig. But it's how we handled it too. You know, so like I think customer service is top notch, you know, and I kind of feel bad because like my emotions are always on my sleeve, and sometimes I feel like I'm a little too crazy with customers, but like I think most of them are usually pretty cool. Because like I'm real, I'm not lying to their face, I'm not bullshitting them. It's like, hey, like this is what's going on, you know, and like whenever something goes on, like I always take a picture. Or my personal favorite is like I love taking people into the shop. It's like, hey, like let's put hands on this. Let's see what's going on.
That counts for so much.
And exactly, because like it's as a mechanic, you're kind of fighting in that stigma where people think you're out to fuck them. You know, like it's like what's your first thought when I say dealership?
Nope.
Exactly.
No.
you know,
I have. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to give you credit because you and Adam have, from what I have heard, and Ratchets as well, kept a sterling reputation throughout the entire time I've ever heard about you guys. And that's not something that like is very common, especially in the mechanical industry. And whenever I hear of a project going to you guys, I never hear of it coming back bad.
You know, and that's the thing. It comes down to the customer service. Like I know, just like the other guys, like I know if something happens with Keith, you pick up the phone, you're like, hey Keith, this is happening. You'll just say bring it back and I'll take care of it, you know? I think that goes a long way with people is because people get it, like we're all human. Like how often do you guys fuck up at work? You know, and it's
Twice
really
a
not
day,
a fuck
every
up
day.
because you can fix it, you know? I've eaten some expensive lessons, you know, I've paid to go to college on some stuff. Like we've had a Jeep where one of the early ones that we were doing frame repair on, and the tub twisted a little bit, and the customer was super pissed off, and I ended up buying the Jeep off of her because she's like, you know what, like I'd be a lot happier if you bought it. I was like, you know what, like if I buy it, you don't have a pot to piss in. So I bought it. You know, and I ended up, I think I paid 12 for it. I sold it for 10, and like I took a little bit of hit on it, but like it's gone and nobody's suing me. You know, and she's happy and I'm happy, and sometimes you gotta pay to go to college for certain lessons, but I know what we did wrong on that one, and we'll never let that happen again. You know, and because that's the other thing is it's really important to learn from your lessons. Like I said, every single mistake, whether even if I didn't make it personally, it weighs heavily on my mind. You know, like I'm glad to hear that you guys say that you hear good things about my shop because in my mind we suck. You know, it's but that's all I can think about is all the stupid little stuff that goes wrong, and I'm a crazy person because of it. I'm super paranoid. Like everything that goes out the door, every single tire we put on, we use a torque wrench for. If we use wheel spacers, it's always red Loctite and a torque wrench. I'm all about procedures and using the right tools for the right job. Like, I got an apprentice. I'm pretty sure I made him cry one day because I was losing my mind because I did a regear on a Toyota, and he came in and for a 500-mile fluid gear change, and all he had to do is take the drain plug off, and he didn't have a metric Allen key, so he used his standard one and stripped out the plug. No. And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I just re-geared this thing like 3 weeks ago. I obviously took it apart. Therefore, I obviously have the correct tools. Why didn't you just come grab me or grab my tool or whatever?" And I wasn't as gentle with my words as that, but it was
a case of the what the fuck syndrome.
Yes. And then how I found out is I had like two of my other guys standing there trying to figure out on how to fix this scenario. So I look over there, I'm paying 3 people to stand there and look at something that shouldn't be a problem. Yep. So I am losing my mind. And I ended up fixing it in like 5 minutes because I just grabbed like the next biggest torque spit, stuck it on my air hammer, and tapped it in with the air hammer. So, and what's nice about using a torque spit is that slightly oversized the hammer. Yeah, it bites and it'll cut in a new. So now instead of being a split, his drain plug's now a torque spit, but it cut into new spline drive and now it's working pretty good. But I probably overreacted because it was such a simple fix, but I was so pissed off because like it shouldn't have been an issue in the same time. But like I guarantee you, my apprentice will never do that again. You know.
Nope. And it's very odd that you bring up the apprentice thing because I go through this now and like I'm a tool and die maker by trade, and I'm sure that everyone on the podcast has already fucking heard this, but too fucking bad. So I've got an apprentice that I was working with. He just went to nights, not because I ran him off, but because we needed help on nights. But there were times where when I was working with him, it was frustrating because I would explain what I wanted done. He would watch me do it, and then he wouldn't end up, like, he'd come back to me with a convoluted problem on what should have been a simple thing, right? And it's like, okay, now we have to fully disassemble part of this die set to drill out bolts because instead of using the metric stuff on a European machine, you used a standard. And so I completely and utterly understand that. And it's like, what the fuck, dude? We have metric
it's not really their fault either. It's just lack of experience. You know, and if you talk to any tradesperson, when you can get these people out of the technical colleges, and they could tell you how everything works, but by God, they're going to make every stupid mistake in the book as they're learning how to put stuff together because they don't have they don't have the life lessons of putting the wrong bolt in the wrong hole yet.
My old mentor from when I was an apprentice called that the ass tax. They haven't fully paid their ass tax yet. And, be a dumbass, you got to pay the ass tax. But going back to the customer service side of things, though, right? Like, there are 2 prime examples I can think of. One, I had a cage build, and it was supposed to be 2 months, and it became 9 months, and the scope of the project changed. I'm not going to claim that I was talked into a different thing than what I had originally envisioned, but like we went from building a cage that was going to support chopping this Jeep up to chopping the Jeep up, and it just didn't end up coming out right. It was 9 months behind schedule with every single problem. And then like where I live, I have a dirt driveway that's now, a gravel driveway now. It's not great to do tube work and stuff in. So I brought my stuff over to Sam at Naked and Afraid, And there was multiple times where my Jeep was there, that I was over there, and we were talking about what we wanted to do for the bends, how we were going to go about reinforcing the cross member, because, like, you know, this unibody's been wheeled for 5 years. It needs a lot of custom stuff to keep it going. And polar opposite experiences, but both of those stick out because of the service.
Yeah. I actually do have like a long-term project in here that's been in the shop for like 2 years, and what I've learned from this project is that I'll never take on a long-term project again, because it's kind of tough with certain projects, because like the day-to-day stuff is easy because you can get it in, it gets done, it goes out the door. But I feel super bad for this guy, and he's been a saint and a half, because and I always worry about being like the next DMR with this guy.
Oh, hey, how did you know who I was talking about?
Well, reasons, but it's so that's because my dad always said you can learn something from everybody, even if it's what not to do. And I watched that unfold with DMR, and I told myself I will never do that. So my only thing that helps me sleep at night with this customer is the fact that if he said, I want to pull out right now, I can hand him every single part of the $35,000 worth of parts he bought and hand it back to him. And not only that, it's a rolling vehicle with all the parts bolted to it. It's just, I'm on like the last 10%, the hardest 10% of the build. But it's only been taking so long, and because I don't want to half-ass it. So every time I talk to him, he's like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, dude, like, I'm sorry, I suck. I haven't actually done anything, because I could do it, but it's not getting my full attention, and I don't want to cut a corner. And like,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this thing's probably going to be like 50 grand by the time it's done. It's like this kid's giving me like probably close to like $35,000, but it's almost all in parts. Like I have $15,000 just in axles from East Coast Gear Supply underneath this thing. It's got a full Gen Right cage, Gen Right fuel cell, Gen Right suspension. Like he just opened up his pocketbook and was like, I want all the expensive shit. Midnight Metalworks. It's got a Midnight Metalworks transfer case in it, Adams drive shafts, aux lockers, front and rear. It's a super badass rig, and it's going to be super awesome. And like I said, I feel like an asshole because it's been in my shop for almost 2 years, and I was supposed to be done by the end of this month, and I think it might be done the first week of August, so I'm getting super close, but it's been a struggle to get to that point, because it's obviously I've been with COVID and all that, I've been struggling with manpower for the past like 2 years. I've only really had 2 actual employees besides my apprentice. So I had an apprentice, and then like a full-time tech, and then I had a part-time fabricator welder that does all my all my frame repairs and stuff like that. And then, and I've been trying to get people in for years, and every time I try somebody, they look good on resume. I do a working interview. They're working. It's so hard to judge somebody off of a single day of work that you didn't really schedule work for them in the first place. So you're kind of like, oh, just do that. So I've had a few people like that I've had to let go because they were literally going to kill somebody.
Oh no.
I had, yeah. So I got a couple fun stories that I went to college on. Like I had one guy, he did a brake job, and he bled the brakes, pulled the Jeep out of my shop, and my parking lot's slanted. So as soon as you roll out the shop doors, it's kind of downhill to the road. So he backs out of the door, garage door, hits the brakes, and proceeds to roll into the Jeep that's parked on the island behind him.
Oh man!
Because I bet I'll give you 2 guesses on where the bleeders were.
Open
on the bottom.
Oh no! Oh,
So he bled the brakes, but they were still full of air. So he did that. And then, no, that wasn't that
That's
guy.
just painful.
I had another guy do a lift kit and alignment, and then the customer picked up the vehicle on the way home from picking it up from me. Literally, like 30 minutes later, his front track bar fell off.
Oh, did you say track bar or drive shaft?
Front track bar.
What?
You know, these are the certain, like, I probably shouldn't be talking about this, but I'm not. I don't really hide anything. But like, and that kind of brings us to the customer service. Customer calls up super pissed, and like, you make it right, you know, and like it's and they lose a lot of faith. But I ended up, like I said, I let that guy go because he was going to kill somebody, you know, like there was a couple other things, like he loaded up a vehicle on a lift, and then that vehicle shifted on the lift and almost took out the guy that actually makes me money. And after that, that was kind of the final straw. I was like, dude, like, you need to leave because I can't have you here. Like, dude, you're going to kill a customer, or you're going to kill me or somebody in my shop.
What do you even do though when that track bar comes off? That's like, do you have to like call the tow company and be like, yeah, there's a truck on the way or something like that? You can't even. That's indefensible. But I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, like, that's an absolute fuck up.
It really is, because like, you never tighten the bolt, you know.
Wow.
And which sucks is because like, I make the guys, obviously, like I said, I torque everything. We paint marker for torque lines. I even go like this torque seal stuff that you put on there, and then it breaks off and stuff twists, you know. But
yeah, Grams showed me that stuff. That stuff's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's super cool stuff, and because we make it. Every single lift kit we do, I got an in-house alignment, so we align it, and then we hand it to the customer, and we tell them to come back in 50 miles so we could retorque the lug nuts, and 500 miles to make sure everything else is still tight. And typically, if there's a weird drivability issue, they would know by then. Luckily, nobody comes back with drivability issues, and 99.9% of the time, nothing's ever loose. You know, it's just, like I said, I feel like I'm super paranoid about stuff going out the door, but it's only because I've had people make it this way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like everything goes out the door. I tell my guys, it's my job to ask stupid questions like, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do that? You know, it's not even the question their ability to do the job. It's just a sanity check is like, did you remember to do this? You know, and like, I've been guilty of doing certain things. You know, you wake up in the middle of the night, it's like, fuck, did I tighten that? And then you go into work and you find out that you didn't do it, you know, and so you fix it before it goes out the door. You know, it's just, like I said, the human factor is an interesting aspect of the business that you don't really think about until it starts biting you in the face.
So, what do you think is causing the issues with finding good help now?
I'm not really quite sure. I don't know if it's. And so before COVID, I used to have people come in all the time and leave like applications and stuff. And then we never closed for COVID or anything, but I didn't really need to hire anybody until like, that was what, 2020. So 2021, 2022, I was really actively looking for people. But at that point, I think people got to the point where they're getting paid really well to stay at home and just fill out the job applications. Because in Rhode Island, at least, to stay on unemployment, you just got to prove that you filled out 3 applications. And I never did online applications. I always said, hey, I always made, like, whenever I advertise, it's like, come on down to the building and we'll talk. Mm-hmm. You know?
Which, to be honest, I appreciate that, because I want to know if I'm walking into a shithole or not.
Exactly. It's been good for both sides of the equation, because whenever somebody came down, I gave them a tour of the building, kind of gave them a history about where we started, where we're going, what equipment, and like showing off all the equipment I bought. You know, like, I'm pretty proud that like I'm still the only off-road shop in my area with an alignment machine. Like that's a feather in my cap. And that was 60 grand. So I'm pretty damn proud of that. And like I got brand new. Every lift I put in two post lifts that are 12,000-pound 2-post open top, so I could do F350 dualies all day long.
Damn.
Especially since and that's huge because we lift a lot of larger pickups. I just had F350 long bed with the 7.3 gas job in here. We were doing some work on it. And it's nice to be able to pick up that truck and know that we're not going to die.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And it's confidence for your guys too. I remember I was working at a shop for a little bit and they had a center post lift. And that thing was the sketchiest fucking thing because of the stupid little I don't even know what the fuck to call them. Yeah, dude, it was terrifying. And the guy was just like, it is what it is. And I'm like, but it's not though.
It's not. And it is what it is until somebody gets hurt and then you're fucked.
Exactly, or a customer's vehicle falls off the car or off the lift.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of having stuff that's oversized. So all the stuff I've been buying is Ben Pack, and it's still a Chinese lift, but it's overbuilt, and it's quite substantial, especially next to the 9,000-pound lift right next to it. And my alignment rack is rated for 14,000 pounds. And again, when I bought the rack and my lifts, I wanted something that could pick up my F350 dually. And I always had the mentality if I can't work on my own junk, what's the point? Especially with a Ford, they're always broken anyway, So it's need to be able to work on
that back. Let me be happy with mine.
It's called job security, baby. That's what Fords are.
Exactly. And like I said, I'm pretty proud of the shop that we've been able to build here because I'm constantly upgrading, buying new equipment. It's one of the coolest things I bought was an alignment machine. I was so scared about that investment, and 5 years ago, spending $60,000 was an astronomical amount of money. And I was like, how am I going to even pay for this or whatever? And if I had to do it again, I would do it all over again, 100%. I don't understand how anybody in my business can do what we do without an alignment machine. It's so essential. Every single thing we do needs an alignment. You change the control arm, alignment machine. Def level diagnosis, alignment machine. Everything goes on it. And so. And that's been such a huge tool for sales and making sure everything that leaves our shop drives the way exactly how it's supposed to drive.
Yeah. Because then what are you expected to tell people hey, sorry, you're going to have to drive this to an alignment shop. But on top of it, it might absolutely suck to drive to the alignment shop. And then they might have a bad taste in their mouth. And then they're taking it to another mechanic to check on your shit because they're like, hey, this dude just had me drive this thing. This thing is sketchy. Having your alignment machine and being able to double check yourself is fucking awesome.
Yeah, and when I first opened up my business, that's what I was doing. But at the time, I think I was getting $40 an hour. So you get what you pay for.
Correct. Yeah.
And then after I moved into my current building in 17, there's Town Fair Tire right up the road. So they were doing all my alignments for wholesale, but they were getting pretty pissed off at me because all they do is tow and go. They won't adjust control arms or whatever. So every single lift kit I was selling adjustable control arms because I'm big about getting the numbers where the geometry where it needs to be. Because otherwise it drives like trash. So every lift kit we did, they would align it 3-4 times because they would align it, we'd pick it up, look at the paper, make an adjustment and send it back up the road. So sometimes we get it on the second shot, sometimes we get it on the third shot, but each time I did it, now it's 2 guys driving up the road. And at that time, there's only 2 of us. So I'm walking up the shop, driving up the road, dropping them off, driving back, unlocking the shop. But it's a huge hassle, just from the time saving driving around, the machine's paid for itself, and I'm actually in the process of getting ready to upgrade my tire machines. I think I made a decision to spend. You don't even want to know how much these tire machines are, but I'm going to get a Hunter tire machine that's leverless and a road.
Oh
force
my god, yeah,
balancer.
are they like 80 or something? I know that there's something
Um,
absolutely insane.
Well, I'll let you know. I got the folder right here in front of me. So I was quoted after taxes and all that, $46,308.22.
For a tire machine. How big of a tire can you do on?
That's a tire machine and a road force balancer.
Still.
I think let's see. I think the tire machine's good up to like 46.
Okay, so I mean, other than that, you got to spoon it, but
You're
Yeah.
good
End of
for
the
the
world.
next 2 years.
And I'm honestly more excited about the road force balancing because, like, there's been a few customers where they come back a couple times and they're like, "Oh, I got a vibration. We rebalance the tires." And after like 2 tries or 3 tries, I'm usually like, "Look, like we've done everything we can. It's just like you need to go to like somewhere with a road force balance." And it's just the equipment I have is just too limited. So the game plan is to invest in new equipment, and I'm hoping that this I'm super nervous about this decision too, but I'm kind of banking on the experience that the alignment machine was the best decision I ever made, and just with the better equipment, you get a better product, and a better product gets people talking more about like, oh, I've never had my 37s run down the road so well, and that's what I want. I don't want to just do the best I can. Like I never settle for good enough, if that makes sense. Like my best today doesn't necessarily is going to be my best tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's the best that you can do as a business owner because there are things that I'm willing to live with, but my name is only on it because it's my vehicle.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. Like my name's literally on the side of building it. If Barrette Fabrication ever turns into a shit name, I literally ruined my personal name. Like I got to live with that for the rest of my life. It's just.
Luckily, off-roading is only a small geographic, so at least you're only going to suck to a few people, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't have laughed, but that was funny as fuck.
I mean,
I'm just kidding.
good. I mean, I got 3,000 customers in my database now, so that's a lot of people to disappoint.
That's fantastic. I mean, honestly, though, that's really, really incredible. For being a local guy in an off-road shop, dude, pat yourself on the back for that. That's awesome.
It's kind of crazy because, like, I tell people the business happened by accident. It just one thing just kind of happened, and you just follow the rabbit hole.
Wow. Well, alrighty. So we are past our 2.5 hour, close to our 2.5 hour mark. Slowly trying to start wrapping stuff up here. So, quick thing: where can people find you on social media?
So, they can find me on Facebook as Ricky Barrette. I think it's just facebook.com/Ricky Barrette. That's it. And then on Instagram, I'm Barrette Fabrication. And then I also got a website, barrettefabrication.com, oceanstateoffroad.com. And I think that's it. Just don't message me on Instagram because I don't know how to do it. Like I go on there probably like once every couple months, post a couple pictures, and then go back to ignoring it because I don't know how to use DMs and stuff. Which is ironic because I used to, my first business was a software development business. So
I mean, you did pretty damn good at getting into this, so like there wasn't any hiccups or anything with that.
Oh, I didn't know that Discord had channels, so I never even used Discord before.
Yeah, that was simple enough. Cody, before I have to steal your thunder,
You are not gonna ask the question, you fucker.
you're gonna ask it then.
Alrighty. So, being a business owner, somebody that's probably going to be suggesting tires to people, what is the best DOT tire for off-roading, and what is the worst DOT tire for off-roading, under your opinion?
I probably should have put some thought into this. I'm pretty much a BFG fanboy at this point. I've seen KM3s do some really awesome stuff. And like I've pretty much got DOTs on everything I own now. My 21 Gladiators got them. I had them on my OM617 Diesel TJ, and I have them on my 62 Rustosaurus Jeep pickup. And like everywhere I pointed those tires, they just go. But I've also had a lot of good experience with pretty much every DOT tire I've had. But I think they hook up the best for the New England area. Plus, they wear like iron. Like my Gladiators got 54,000 miles on those tires, and they're still probably like 30%, 40% tread. You know, they're getting close to the end of their life, but I'm pretty happy with them considering that I feel like some other tires like Patagonias or whatever would be like bald by now. As far as worst tire goes,
you said the fan favorite for the worst just a second ago.
Well, the Patagonia wears are pretty damn bad. I will tell you, I started selling those. I sold probably like 3 sets, and then I had a set cause death wobble. And after that, I was like, I'm never selling a set again. Because like I don't want to sell somebody a set of tires and have them death wobble. Because like we had this customer, they had like 4Es on it and a massive body lift and all that. We took the body lift off and we put 37s on it with fuel wheels, and it was really good looking on those Patagonias and fuels.
Mm-hmm.
But after we did that, all it had was death wobble. And no matter what we did, and we found a couple issues, and we straightened that out, and nothing we would do would totally get rid of it. We took the tires off, put the 4s back on it, and all of a sudden it drove like $1 million.
Damn.
After that, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not selling these anymore, because I'm a firm believer you get what you pay for. You know, it's if the price is really good and like you feel like you're saving a lot of money, I guarantee you're not saving money. You're fucking yourself somewhere. It's a compromise.
See, I don't know about that, because back in the day when I picked up my General Grabber XMTs, they were only $180 a tire for 35s. And I have yet to find a negative other than like soft sidewalls. But I mean, that's any kind of load C 35 or DOT tire. So I mean, I don't know.
There is some exceptions to the rules, and I would say it's a cost leader. Kind of like Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight kind of got their name where all their tools are garbage, and all of a sudden they start coming out with quality tools again. You know, because they got to build their name back up. And notice that they threw away all their shit names, and they come out with new brands, and they're higher quality.
Like
but I guarantee you, if we wait long enough, the cost engineers are going to get in, and they're going to start chipping away at the quality of those tools, so they're going to get their profit margins back where they need to be. So in the case with the tires, either that has to happen, or it's a cost leader. So they're losing money initially to get the name out there and get some brand loyalty, and then now they start raising the price up where they're actually got the profit margins where they need it to be, and now people know what they are. Because like you can't just imagine how hard it is to get into a tire market where nobody knows who you are, and you're like, okay, like I'm gonna make this quality product, and you gotta kind of bait people to buy your stuff, to get the name out there, you know. And it's kind of the same reason why people give YouTubers all this free shit. It's because like they just gotta get the name out there, get the name in front of enough people at a good enough cost. People will be like, hey, like I'm gonna take that. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think it's a cost leader when certain things
honestly, that makes a ton of sense to me, because they are expensive as shit now. Now I think they're like $360 a tire back compared to before, which is just crazy to me that they did such a high price jump. But honestly, with that explanation right there, it makes sense.
Yeah, and take it with a grain of salt. Like I'm not a business person. I don't know anything about business. I just kind of show up and do what I'm told.
You just kind of do business.
Yeah.
I think the same thing is probably going to happen with the Baja Boss X's. Because
Those
they're
are a fantastic tire.
Dude, I just got a set of 40 stickies in those. $620 a tire. I don't see that lasting forever when Reds are going for what they're going for, and like the 40 Baja Pros were $755 a tire.
Yeah. I really think it's a little bit of a cost leader to get it out there, and then once they get the brand loyalty, because right now they're trying to bite into a market that like pretty much dominated by Interco and BF Goodrich, you know, and those Boss X's are fantastic tires. I've seen them do some cool stuff. My buddy Mike got them probably 2 seasons ago. It's funny because like he never told me to order them. He's just like, I really want these tires. I really want these tires. And I got tired of fucking watching a flounder on Patagonia wears because he bought the black labels off of Greenleaf. And that was the worst money he's ever spent.
Oh,
and rolling around, just trying to wheel with them, I was pissed off. I was like, dude, like, I don't want to deal with this. So without him asking him or telling him, I ordered him tires, and when they showed up, I said, your tires are here. You owe me like X amount of dollars. He's like, what the fuck? You're worse than my drug dealer.
Yes.
You know, and like, and the second run out with them, we were at Field and Forest, and he was trying to climb up Lady Lumps, and he climbed it, and then he slid back a little bit, and it caught so much traction, it ejected the pinion out of his 9-inch. So without him asking me, I ended up ordering him a new 9-inch center section. And it's like, by the way, you owe me for this too. Meanwhile, his wife's getting pissed off, and he's like, why are you spending so much money? And he's like, it's not me, it's Ricky.
Is there any advice you have for breaking them in, or just set them to 12 pounds and go?
So that's an interesting concept too, is how much tire pressure is too much or how much is too little. That's a magic number that you got to search for yourself. It's kind of like you got to do a little bit of soul searching. Like
that was just a rough.
I had like rough number. I had 4 psi on my SXs, and I'll tell you that was way too little. I ended up settling at 6, and you got to kind of watch how they work, because if you want them to mold around stuff, but you don't want the sidewalls to wrinkle, because once the sidewalls start wrinkling, the tire goes from a flat contact patch to like curling up, and then you lose a whole bunch of traction, and then it'll slip. So if you're watching somebody and their sidewall wrinkles, you'll notice each time it wrinkles, the tire kind of jumps a little bit.
I never put 2 and 2 together there, but that's interesting. I will say the 12 psi thing, that's just a random number I'm throwing out there because my Nittos were good at 6, but I ran them on narrow wheels and all that, and these wheels that I've got now are slightly wider, and being stickies, I don't want them to do the same thing that my Nittos did, where you had to run them low because they were such a stiff carcass. I want the stickies to actually have a little bit of pressure to almost like push them into contacting. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be like 8 to 12 pounds is where they're going to live.
And that's probably a good starting point, because like it's also super easy to let air out as you go with each trip. Just kind of watch how they work, and you'll kind of determine what the tire pressure you are at. Like on my last trip out with the 39s, I was at 8 psi, and that was a little too much. And then so I think my next trip I'm probably going to be like at 6 and just see how they work. Unfortunately, I don't have enough experience with those tires, but I think Mike's probably running. He's definitely running single digits in his, and his rig's probably like.
When I was asking, I meant like, do they like to be heated up first, or are they kind of like they'll break in as they break in tire? Because I've watched with the Intercos they seem to really like that. After that first good burnout, they start working better.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a good crawler tire. I've been seeing them. I've been watching them crawl pretty good. I don't think they're like what are they? The KRB threes or whatever. There's the turf tires that Bradley was running forever. Like those things, they were stickies, but they weren't stickies until you spun them. You know, so like they would do okay, but like they weren't really that great. But you'd have to heat them up, and then they would work their magic. You know, I don't think they're quite like that. They're so damn soft and gummy. I don't really think you really need to heat them up. I think, if anything, I think they'll be better once they hit like half tread.
Really?
Yeah, because the same thing with like the regular Boss tires is there's just too much fucking tread. The lugs fold and then you lose the tread. I think those tires at half tread would also be amazing.
Awesome. So before we go and make this the tire podcast, I suppose that we are definitely like going to blow past our normal time limit here. Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah. Why the hell do you want to talk to me?
Well,
so
I can answer this one very easily.
I've got a different answer than Cody's got, so feel free to throw it out there.
Alrighty, so for me, it's because I'm looking into picking up a 30-30 rig, so I really wanted to hear your thought processes on that. And 2, because you're doing different cool shit, and that's what the people fucking love, man. People going out and trying out new adventures that nobody else wants to take the risk on and spend the money and time on. People want to hear that shit. So honestly, to me, you're really, really smart. You have a really good head on your shoulders. You're great at talking. You have a cool rig. You're doing different shit. And you're from New England. Boom.
In my case, it's because I was talking with Nick. Well, Nick was building that buggy on and off, and we were out at S'more, and we kept throwing your name back and forth, and I met you at Go Topless Day in 2015, I want to say, or 2016.
Oh, that's a lot. Okay.
And you were just a super nice dude, and you didn't know me from anyone. That was when I'd rolled that ZJ, and you took a quick look over it, and were
That
like,
would
yeah,
have been
everything.
2018.
Was that 18?
It would have been 18 because Kate and I had just started dating the December before.
Okay, so then it was 18.
Yeah.
You took a quick look over it, and then we talked about your rig for like 30 minutes, and then I went back to wheeling, and I just remembered that. So, yeah.
I'm glad I wasn't a dick.
And also, you have a reputation that precedes you in a good manner, and I wanted to hear how you earned that reputation, is another point.
It makes me super happy and thankful that people have high opinions of me because it's, like I said, I'm super critical on myself, and I guess not everybody likes hearing good things about themselves, but I'm truly honored to the fact that you guys think that I'm doing good stuff and that I even speak well, because I don't think I do. But
when Bob Swinski says that, yeah, he's a good fucking dude, you should definitely talk to him. Something's there. He says that about very few people.
Bob's such good people. You know, the first time I met Bob, I was like, fuck that guy. You know, because he's a little bit of gruff, he's a little bit abrasive, but the thing is like I took the time out of my day to actually start talking to him and Liza, and like I realized that they're really, really awesome people. They're down to earth, and they care more about the sport than most people do. You know, like they literally eat, sleep, and breathe the sport. You know, even now, Liza's still really active in the clubs and with the NEA and stuff like that. And like it's huge that because they could shut the doors on F&F anytime. The place is paid off. They don't need it to make money. You know, they could just turn it into a campground and not deal with all us retards fucking up their weekend every weekend. You know, and the fact that they're willing to put up with it because they love the sport is huge. You know, and they're super great people, and I'm so thankful that I'm able to actually know them and hang out with them from time to time. You know, it was, and one of the last time I was hanging out with them was after a snow run. We were doing the snow run in March, and then when we got back to Field and Forest doing the Class 6 roads, it was just Eugene, Bob, and myself standing out in the field, freezing our ass off bullshitting for like an hour and a half. And then Liza calls, he's like, "What are you guys doing? Come inside, and it's warm in here, you dumbasses." And and then I hung out inside the house for a while, and it was just cool, like talking about random stuff. And like Liza's chili is amazing. If you ever get a chance to eat her cooking, she's fantastic at cooking. But yeah, it's just I have really good memories bullshitting with them, and it's I don't know, it's just they're really good people, you know, and I'm just so thankful that I know everybody I know. Like, and that's one of the coolest things about listening to you guys. I'm not a podcast guy, but what got me into listening to it is like Bob's like, "Oh, I'm doing this," so I listened to it, and I was like, "Dude, that was pretty awesome." And then I started going down the list, and I was like, "Oh, Harry Hendricks, I fucking love that guy." And I started listening to all my friends, so I'm still jumping around listening to random podcasts, and it's cool too because like I'm learning new things about the friends that I don't know about. Like I knew Katrini was into King of the Hammers, but I didn't realize he was there from like basically day one, you know?
Yeah.
And listening to those stories was amazing, you know? And listening to Eric Amato talk about starting up a company doing fluid dynamics and steering pumps and hydraulics and stuff. He is a remarkably smart guy. And like, I knew Harry was super smart, and just listening to him talk about like going to school for engineering and that type of stuff blows my mind. You know, you never know who you're going to meet in this sport, and it's easy to look at these guys and look at these fucking dumbass rednecks. They're so damn stupid and spending all this money on stuff, and you talk to people and you realize that like you're wheeling with a dude with a PhD. You know, like guys like Eric Weybrandt, he was the smartest guy I've ever met.
You know, I think that given everything that you're saying there, I think a good closer for this would be that the content of your character and the actions that you put forward are going to be some of the most important things, because that is essentially what you leave behind and how you view the world.
Exactly.
And, you know, I think that we're really close to the deadline. I feel bad for Cody, and I would love to keep going with this, but we're going to have to get this edited tonight because we got some stuff going on tomorrow with the release, and I'm not going to be home. So I think that we'll close it out right about here with this. It's going to be dad advice. It's not going to be the normal witty closing, but make sure that the actions that you do in this world are something that you would be proud to be remembered by, and be kind to animals.